All right. So I'd like to welcome everyone today to the monthly Spark Talk. My name is Lisa Blue, and I'm the Director of Artificial Intelligence Strategies here at Eastern Kentucky University. When it comes to Gen AI, most people either feel excitement about the possibilities or dread about the unknown. My job and the point of these talks is to replace dread with curiosity while giving you strategies you can put into immediate practice as soon as this talk is done. Each month, we trade tips, stories, and strategies for bringing AI into teaching, research, and service. The goal is to make your work easier, to prepare our students for an AI enhanced workplace, and to do it all in a way that's thoughtful, ethical, and responsible. I'm pleased today to feature the work of Dr. Tim Jansky, an associate professor from the School of Education here at Eastern Kentucky University. As Tim is going through his presentation today, if you have questions, feel free to either drop those in the chat, and I'll be keeping an eye on the chat, or raise your hand and we can acknowledge you and Tim can answer your questions. All right, Tim, what can you tell us about reimagining course design with AI?
Well, a little bit, at least an hour's worth of information. So we'll start that. Thank you all for being here. I'm like, when Lisa was telling me how many people signed up, I was kind of a little intimidated and scared. And this is officially the largest Zoom like world that I've ever spoken in front of. Um, and so I'm gonna talk and demonstrate and show some things to y'all in two parts. Part one is going to be how I have used AI as a co-designer for a course. I'm going to use a course that I'm teaching in the spring. I haven't like preemptively planned all of this out. So I'm going to talk about prompts, how to use it, how to have a dialogue with it. Part two is going to be about um, more like in-person classes. Like how do you change pedagogically or use AI pedagogically to maybe improve or be different when it came new ideas when it comes to classroom teaching. We'll wrap up with some Q&A, but please don't hesitate to chime in if you have questions. Like raise your hand or put them in the chat, and that would be great. I really appreciate that. Before I'm going to share my screen in just a moment, and I'll start talking through some things. Before I get started, I wanted to talk about like how I think about AI, particularly when it comes to helping me do the work that I do. I think of it as a teenager or as a young child. And here's my explanation for that. Number one, sometimes you can have like a good series of like transactions going with AI, like it's giving you the stuff you're looking for and it's helping you out a lot. And then it'll just lose track of everything and just go off in a tangent. And you're like, wait, where did this come from? This is like talking to my teenage daughter. You're like, wait, where did this come from? So then you have to maybe revisit what we're talking about this, not that. The other part of this is sometimes if you're not clear with your instructions, um, AI interprets them however it so chooses. So I'm telling my two young kids, hey, go clean your room. They interpret that as let me just like shift things around and hide it from plain sight, put it under the bed, hide it in the closet. And so that's how they interpret it. But if I go in the room with them and I say, okay, the Legos have to get put back in the Lego bin. Your dirty clothes go in the dirty clothes bin. And I begin to point out all the different things that need to happen. They tend to understand way clearer what the expectations are. AI is the same way. So AI can go off on tangents and it can interpret things in ways that it wants to. And so that's why I say it can be very similar to um, a teenager or a young child. So if you keep that in mind as you're working with this, um, it can be less frustrating, I think, if you just like, oh my God, this is like, that. So I want you to keep that in mind as you work with AI. The other part of this is I use AI sort of iteratively. And this comes out of how I work in general. When AI was new, I thought it was this cool, novel thing, and I'm just naturally curious. I think if you're in higher ed and academia, you tend to be curious. And when I'm curious, I just used to go into Google and type in my curious topic and then find out all these resources. Well, for a while, AI did that for me. Like I would just go into ChatGPT and type in my question, and then I didn't have to actually go look for information. It just presented information to me. And I could ask questions and get follow up with that. And so I tended to begin using AI just as a inquiry, like, oh, I'm curious tool. But I over time morphed into, I have a research partner. We've been partners for 5 years. And I began to see how I was sort of evolving in my use of AI, and it closely resembled how Trevor, my research partner, and I worked. I'll give you an example of this. So, like, let's say that we're writing a manuscript to be published. We may spend a section, like an hour on a paragraph, because we're trying to make sure the paragraph says what we want it to say in the way that we want it to say. We may like write a sentence, step back, take a look at it. Oh, what if we change this word to that? And then we do that, and we step back and we look at it again. I tend to find myself doing that a lot with how I interact with AI, is I will let it do some work. I will read through what it has, and maybe like 80 to 90% of what it gives me is really good, but I'm not shooting for 80 to 90%. I'm looking for 100%. So I may like tweak like one or two phrases in my prompting, or I may ask a different question or a question in a new way that elicits a different response. And so, um, so the so the two things that I like to keep in mind when I'm talking with AI is, number one is it's temperamental and it tends to forget. Number two, I tend to think of this as a dialogue. It's like it's a in and out conversation. Matter of fact, I found myself this weekend. This is strange. I was working this weekend and I was texting my best friend, and we have, on my computer, I have texting too. And there were multiple times that I sent a text message to my friend when actually I typed it into ChatGPT, because I was like now I'm like, I can't separate the two, it seems. And I'm like, it's bothering me now. I'm on it too often. And then one more thing that I want to talk about before I jump into showing you things is when you're getting stuff that you, and I'm gonna credit Scott Lusk for this, who's in the room. When you're not getting maybe the things you're looking for with your AI tool, there are different models that are built in. And I'll show you this in just a moment. And sometimes just shifting the model to a different one. Now, a lot of them recently have updated, and Lisa and I were talking about this earlier. They've updated, so there's not as many like models to choose from, but there are still some legacy models that you can get. And I'll show you what these look like in a moment. But oftentimes switching models will give you different feedback. And sometimes that may be the thing that you need to do. Or sometimes what I like to do, and I'll show you this later, is I'll go onto a different AI platform and do the same prompt there and see what it comes up with. And then you've got like two things to work with, and you may be more closely resembling what you're looking for overall. And so that's how I come to use and think about AI. So I wanted to start with that. Um, and right before I jump into this, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll start having a conversation about AI. So I've prepared like some prompts ahead of time, just because I didn't want to like, I wanted to be prepared and not like just in the moment, like, oh, what should I say here? So I'm just going to say that almost all the initial prompts that I'm going to put into ChatGPT first are ones that I've prepared ahead of time. I have not used ChatGPT for these simply because I didn't want to like pre-program it with thoughts and ideas. And so what I put into ChatGPT or Claude, I'll use Claude later, and I may show you Gemini later too. It depends on how I feel about things. Um, what I put in here is new to this platform. They do have memory if it's turned on, and they can remember things that you did previously. So it can recall things. It also can forget things. Um, and so for a period of time, it remembered that my youngest son is a picky eater, and that was like in my like, hey, tell me about myself. And it would tell me about myself, and it said I have a son that's a picky eater. I'm like, why is that like at the top of the list about me? All the things that I interact with this thing, and it remembers that my son is a picky eater. And so I had to delete that from the history. It was bothering me. When you're doing a prompt, does like writing a prompt into this, and I said before, it's better if you're clear. And so I have like a maybe a three-part formula for this. So let me just like, I'm going to tell it to you and then I'll show you what I mean. I like to introduce a context. What I mean by that is, here's the situation that I am working on. So introduce the context. Two, provide a ton of details and attach documents if you have them. Three, give it orders. Tell it to do this. And so if you think about your prompt in those ways, give it a context, give it details, and tell it what to do, you tend to get started on the right track. And so as I jump into this, I'm going to begin talking about redesigning a course. By the way, this is a very monologic presentation and talk, and I apologize for that. This actually contradicts completely with the way in which I like view myself as a teacher and an educator, but I'm modeling this. And so I'm justifying that in my brain, like, hey, it's okay since I'm modeling and thinking aloud, because these are good teaching practices that I tell my students to do as well. Last semester, like in the summer, I'm teaching a class this semester that I've never taught before. It's a grad class. And I'd been told from colleagues that, oh, this class is kind of outdated. And I didn't really pay attention to the class because it was new to me and I was doing all these other things. So towards the end of the summer, I actually opened up Canvas and began to look at the old shell of a course. And I'm just to use the word that was very popular when I was growing up, I was mortified at what I saw. I'm teaching an action research class to master's level students, and everything in this document on this course shell was at least a decade or older. And like, for example, module one, it talked about here's some hot trends in education. Hot trends in education in 2025 are not the same as they were in 2015 when this course was developed. Like we were talking social emotional learning back then, but today we're talking about like AI in education, like we're doing right now. We're talking about COVID recovery in education. We're talking about a lot of science of reading and literacy. And so there are a lot of topics 10 years ago that they still matter, but they're not pressing as it is today. And I was a little like, I can't have my name on this course. And so what I ended up doing, and this is the first time, like what I'm going to show you today is essentially what I did at the end of July with this course. This is a 15-week course, and I was like, I cannot have my name attached to this course. And so I spent one whole week, and I clocked myself at just under 60 hours for 1 week, just under 60 hours of work with AI to redesign this course. Now I'm going to pause here to tell you how I made it possible. Number one, I have a paid subscription to ChatGPT. If you do not have a paid subscription to any of these AI services, or your university doesn't give them to you as part of their subscriptions, or your workplace, it's really hard to get this done because they're going to cut you off constantly. Claude did that to me the other day in the middle of a thought. It was writing something out and then it stopped. And I really, really wanted to know what it was going to say. And so I had to wait till noon. And this was at like 8:30 in the morning. I had to wait till noon to go back and find out what it was going to say. And I'm not very patient when it comes to stuff like that. And so I currently have a paid subscription to ChatGPT. I pay $20 a month for their whatever level that is. And so that lets me keep going. Although there are sometimes I have maxed out some of like their other features that have now been sunsetted. But generally, ChatGPT is my go-to because I have a paid subscription. Although I do use Claude, I do use Gemini. Those are really the ones that I tend to use. Scott Luskin here may be sad when I tell him this, but I've already told him this. Copilot's not my favorite. But it could just be because we have a very low subscription here at this university. And so it's kind of like, So I spent 60 hours redesigning that course. And I got an email last night from a student that told me, oh my God, this course makes so much sense. And um, and I was thankful. I was like, oh my God, they didn't find out that I spent 60 hours on AI trying to do this. It actually makes sense. My best friend asked me a question when I got done. I said, oh my God, 60 hours of this. And he said, if you were doing this without AI, how long would it take? And I said, 2 months. It would take me 2 months. I've done this before, and literally it would take me 2 months to get this done. And so I'm telling you, I did it in about 60 hours for an entire semester long course, a grad level course, and AI allowed me to do it. So am I a believer that AI can make my job smoother, easier? Yes, absolutely. Some of the things that AI did for me, it found this is a research course. It paired every topic of every module with a very current piece of research literature. So students are like, if we're talking about methodologies, how to write a methodology section, there is an article that's attached to it from 2025 that has one of the best methodological sections I've ever seen in my life. And so it allows students to like, okay, we're talking about writing a methodology chapter, and then here's a model that looks really, really good. I didn't know any of and all of these. The other thing is all of these articles it found for me are related to hot topics in education. And so there's like a double whammy when it came to this. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. So let me get started. Enough of me jammering on about this stuff. Let's go. I'm a storyteller. I apologize for that, but then I don't. It's just how I operate. I have a grad class that I'm teaching for the first time next semester. It's called EMS 873 Trends and Issues in ELA, so English Language Arts K through 12. If I go on to the course right now, I can promise you everything is at least 7 years old. Not quite trends and issues in ELA if it's 7 years old. We went through a freaking pandemic. There are different trends and issues in ELA today than there were 7 years ago. And so this is like part one of me actually doing this. I'm going to redesign this course before the semester. Y'all are going to see me do part of it. What I want to start though is I wanted to show you what you get if you don't have a great prompt. And so here's my prompt. I'm giving some context. I'm designing a grad level course for students working on an MAED in literacy studies or the literacy coaching certificate. This course, EMS 873, Trends and Issues in ELA, K through 12, is online, asynchronous, over a 7 week period. The first 6 weeks will be dedicated to the content, and the seventh week will be a key assessment submission. Attached is the key assessment and the old syllabus. So I'm going to attach those documents. So let me go ahead and do that. I've got that all set up. So I'm going to drag these over. Now, I actually had to update the key assessment because it wouldn't have applied at all currently. So this is my prompt. Let's just find, I don't know what ChatGPT is going to come up with. Let's find out. Like some of y'all are going to be like, oh my gosh, this is great. I get you're learning with me in the moment. Okay, it's actually creating context, big picture alignment. It fits within these courses. It's a prerequisite for this. There is a key assessment, which is a 10-day instructional unit. Okay. So it's giving me ideas. Since the course must be condensed into 6 instructional weeks and week 7 is for the key assessment submission, here's a suggested structure. So ILA, what's hot in literacy? An intro into Hansfield. Obviously, that's the textbook. Hansfield is the textbook that's attached to this. Discussion, what trends are shaping ELA now, a mini analysis of trends. Okay, they're doing some things. Learning theories and shifts in ELA. Okay. Power, identity, culture. It's using the SLOs to like really identify what each section should be. Designing integrated language arts, pre-planning. It doesn't even come up with like connections to the textbook. It does say updated text to be determined. So this is what I get with a very like limited prompt. Oh, here we go. Updated assignment assessment. So discussion packet. So text study with against the grain. I don't know what that means. Oh, that's an assignment that's already in there. Never mind. These are this, it's going through the assignments in the syllabus. It's telling me that. I just missed that. Infographic. These are all sort of outdated assignments too. Old syllabus heavily used, Hansfield. The text is dated. Options. It's giving me options. Supplement with briefs, newer text like an Alverman, she's from the University of Georgia. Godly on language diversity, integrate multimodal. Okay, and it's giving me options. I can draft new syllabus, can make side by side, no new versus old course map. So this is an example of like, okay, this is what I get with a fairly limited prompt. I'm going to do a new chat, and I have a better prompt, and I'll talk through this prompt in just a second. And you're going to think, oh my God, this prompt is so long. And the answer is yes, it is so long because I want AI, and I sat there and wrote this all out. So I used the same beginning of this. This course is online, asynchronous over a 7 week period. For this first 6 weeks will be dedicated to content. The seventh week will be key assessment submission. That's the same as before. Each week should be its own module, focus topic. This course, and I used the course catalog description right here. So I took the course catalog description, put it in there. Here are the SLOs from the course. Like I'm giving it to them. And then here's a little description. I value approaches to learning that put the students in charge of their learning rather than me lecturing or feeding them information. Also, I really like collaboration beyond just generic discussion boards. I want the collaborative learning to mean something. I like to think about ways to do that in this online asynchronous environment. We need to do the following. I said we, I tend to always think about it as a person, but organize topics around each module. Decide if we need a textbook. So offer suggestions. I'm inclined to go without a textbook and use scholarly articles or selected book chapters. Develop a structured plan that works each week. Reading, discussion board, application activities, key assessment tasks. I'm going to add in, let's go back to my documents. I'm going to add in again the syllabus. Actually, I'm not, I forgot, I'm not going to add in the syllabus because I don't want to corrupt it into thinking that's what I want it to be. I am going to add in the key assessment. And let's see what it comes up. Now we got to think about how simple the last one was.
So Tim, while that's generating the output, we do have a question.
Sure.
You find ChatGPT remembers and uses the standards.
Yes. Well, it was in that document. The SLOs were in that document, and
Mhm.
in that document were also the INTAS standards and the ILA standards that connect with that. I actually played with this in Gemini the other day. Um, is that what you're talking about? The standards, I'm guessing maybe that are attached to the.
Yeah, associated with the class,
Yeah.
yes.
So I played with this in Gemini yesterday because I was actually curious if it could do these because like in there are the technology standards that are attached. So we've got the INTAS standards, which are teacher ed standards. There's the ILA, International Literacy Association, so the literacy
Mhm.
standards, and then there were the tech standards that were attached. And there's nothing explicit in several of these modules that it came up with. This was in Gemini that were tech related. And I was like, why? So if this SLO says this, and we're saying that module two, for example, meets this SLO, it also then has to be the tech SLO, the tech standard. And so I did some dialogue, and maybe I'll do that in a minute to show you what this does, but it does know INTAS standards. It does know the ILA standards. It knows those things. Not to mention, um, in the attached key assessment document is a rubric that
Mhm.
are aligned with standards. So it's getting a lot of feed into it about these standards, but it does know these standards. That,
Very good.
yeah.
In the chat, people are suggesting that sometimes you have to go back and remind ChatGPT about the standards, and then
Mhm.
others have suggested either creating a GPT or chatbot to handle it, or creating a ChatGPT project to handle that. So lots of good suggestions.
There we go. Thank you. So course design. So this is 7 weeks, asynchronous, clinical hours, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So sequence of topics, framing ELA trends and issues. So historic shifts in the language arts, examine how trends shape curriculum. Okay. Reading and writing shifts, oral language, listening, speaking. All right. It's giving me topics. Here's some structure: 2 to 3 scholarly articles or book chapters per week, curated practitioner articles, short video, podcast segment. Okay. There's collaborative learning. So there's what I asked it to do. Instead of generic discussion boards, use Padlet walls, collaborative annotations, case study, peer responses, application materials, small, meaningful tasks linked to classroom observations or interviews. Okay, I can get behind all of the stuff that it's working on. So it's saying no single textbook. So there we go. And this is what I was hoping it would say, um, because there's not a current textbook that would fit into what this course really is. And if there was, that would be strange because it's like trends and issues and trends change. And so it'd have to be a very new book. Okay, and so it's asking, would you like to sample read? So here's what I'm going to do because I want to go through one module. And I know that it didn't get what I'm hoping this course is going to be. Number one, I think grad courses should stretch thinking a bit, should challenge um, beliefs and long held values that someone may have because that's what we're in grad school for, is to stretch our minds a bit. And so I know that I want this. I'm a content expert. This is something that I do. I know that I want to talk about literacy from as a social practice, as opposed to just generically talking about things. And so um, I'm going to tell it I'd really like to frame this course around, G concept, of literacy and streets, concept of, I don't know if I can type generally, but definitely not when I have like 100 people watching me type. I'm like, I can't even write on boards most of the time. And anyway, I have autocorrect, but it's not seem to be auto-correcting on here. G's concept of the ID model of literacy and the, um, let's see, G's concept of literacy, streets, and a new London group. Concept of literacy, multimodal. So that's what I want to do because this is like my first module. I'd really want to talk about how we've shifted the idea of reading and writing the English language arts into social practices as opposed to just like we teach kids to read and write. And so, yeah, these big ideas give the course a strong theoretical spine and they tie directly to your SLOs. There we go. So we can frame the 6 content modules as a progression, beginning with literacy as a theory, moving through the ideological and sociocultural dimensions, and then widening into multimodality and classroom application. So let's see, I just gave it some more instruction. So what is literacy? Competing views and frames. So core lens is G's notion. Yes, literacy is a social practice and discourses. There we go. Analyze their own autobiography, literacy autobiography. Yeah, this is great. Using G's concept as primary and secondary discourses. Cool. Key assessment helps them define focus and context of their instructional use. This is thinking ahead. All right, literacy as ideology. So then we're looking at streets, autonomous versus ideological models of literacy. All right. So this is more if I'm designing this class, this would be the direction that I would go with it. And so it just took me 2 little inputs to get a bunch of stuff going in that direction. So streets autonomous, there we go. Applying G Street to reading, writing, speaking, listening, viewing, and representing. That's in the course description, plus in the SLOs, all of these things right here. Multimodality. Okay, so one of the things I'm going to say is that maybe this is a little too much of this in my mind. And so I'm going to say, like, I really was thinking about these things in module 1 and then sort of growing into each of the ELA domains with that as a framework. So yeah, I want everything grounded in this big 3 framework in module 1. And then after that, and so all of a sudden we're just refining at this point because I already kind of got what I'm looking for. Reading through multiple lenses. Okay, so we're how reading counts and who gets access. There we go. Writing, okay, and design. So speaking and listening is a social practice, viewing and visually representing, cool. And then integrating these into structural environments. This actually is like a lot of what I would be looking for as I'm scrolling through this. Consistent templates. We have readings, we have collaborative learning. All right. Do you want me to build a detailed week by week table so it's drop in ready in the module? Well, yeah, let's do that. Let's see what you come up with. I'm gonna hopefully have module 1 done in just a moment. Um, but you see, I'm like talking to y'all, but I actually talk out loud to my computer as I do this too. So there's nothing different from what I'm normally do to now. So here's the readings. G, literacy, discourse, and linguistics, autonomous audio module literacy. There's an excerpt, okay. This is what I was looking for. Look at this, hypothesis. What is that? Key quotes that redefine literacy. Okay. Okay. Each student posts an aha moment about literacy in their own life. Okay. I like that. Clinical task. Interview a colleague about how their definition of literacy shifted in their career. Okay. So they would have to go out and talk to someone. And then we're talking about that. Okay. Let's work on week 1. I like this. We can work with this. All right. Let's get detailed about module 1. And then I always like to just give it to them because if I don't give it to them, it may forget that although it said, here's module 1 up here, it may forget. And so I'm going to tell ChatGPT what module 1 is again. What I'm really hoping it does is give me like, here's the module learning goals. Here we go, right here. By this week, you should be able to, it gives you an overview. You should be able to differentiate between autonomous and ideological models, explain G's discourses. Great. Summarize New England groups. Great, great, great. Okay. This got to be something else that it's trying to figure. I don't know. Hypothesis is, I don't know if that's trying to be like a tech thing or not. So annotate one, this is for collaborative, annotate one of the core readings, highlight passages that challenge or expand your personal understanding of literacy, comment on at least two peers' annotations. Okay. And then on a Padlet, post your aha moment. I think this works for me.
So I'm
Uh,
curious, Tim, because you've
yeah.
used back in the past for annotation. I wonder why it's suggesting hypothesis instead.
Is a hypothesis a thing? Is that a
It
program?
is. It
Okay, well,
is.
that explains why that is. I've never used hypothesis before.
I'd never heard of it.
Yeah, I may have to Google that in a minute. But I think it goes to the idea of being collaborative and it's providing opportunities for new ways because Padlet is kind of that way too. That's like the post-it note one. Um, and so you have a wall when the people post their post-its. And hypothesis obviously has got to be something like that then too. Does anybody, because there's people chiming in the chat, have y'all used hypothesis? I'm unfamiliar with it.
It's a
Michelle,
social
go ahead.
annotation tool. It's a
Okay.
social annotation tool where you like can upload a PDF or a Google Doc, and then you can have dialogic conversation connected to specific pieces of text. You can use hashtags, you can embed GIFs and other kinds of things into it. Yeah, similar to Perusal, but
Okay.
different from Padlet for sure.
Well, we have, I think, Perusal with Canvas here.
We do.
And so, okay, similar to that. Okay. That was new to me. Thank you for chiming in because I thought it was messing something up and y'all obviously knew it wasn't. Um, so, all right, clinical task, interview a colleague. Here are the questions. Like, how would you define literacy when you started teaching? How do you define it now? I would argue that people don't define it much differently, in all honesty, but that's a different topic for a different day. Okay, a summary of this. And so this is like checking for understanding in a lot of ways. Do they grasp this? Are they understanding this? And then we begin their pre-planning for that. Okay, this works really, really well for me. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to take this interview assignment and I'm going to say, I need to develop a description and rubric for this assignment. I'll put it in there. And again, I'm just copying and pasting its own words so it doesn't forget. And I've just become, no, this is like natural because of I get stuff that wasn't connected. So I just always tell it what it needs to know. Okay. Analyze your responses. So if it were me, because we're talking about 2 to 3 pages double spaced of a summary of 3 questions, I would probably ask them to interview more than one person, just generally, so that they can like synthesize ideas across the people. If I wanted them to actually write 2 to 3 pages of something, so I probably would either change this limit to, a paragraph, or just give me a synopsis of their answers, or I'd have them interview more people. And then it gives me a rubric down here. And I mean, all right, thoughtful reflection. My chatbot knows I like reflection because I do research on reflection. And so I'm guessing that that's why this is going to pop up there, although it knows I like that. It knows me. And I have a picky eating son. That's those two things. All right. So if I were to be like looking at this, like I'm satisfied with I've got I've got an assignment for the students. I've got collaborative learning activities for them. I have things for them to read. I may make a short, like a mini lecture. Let me show you this real fast. Okay, let's say I wanted to do this. Like I need a mini lecture or this. And it's going to create one for me in just a second. By the way, so Jim G was a professor at the University of Wisconsin for a lot of years, and that's where I did my PhD. And one year I got to be in his office because it was empty, and I just felt like a king because he's like a giant in the world that I'm in. He's now retired. He's got great eyebrows, if you looked him up. But anyway, I felt like oh my gosh, I'm in Jim G's office, and it felt special. So it's giving me what to say, and it's going to say, could if I just look draft a slide deck? I would just like the slide deck. Can you create the slide deck so I can download? If y'all didn't know you could do this, I mean, this may amaze you. It's pretty terrible, but it's a start. And with PowerPoint, you can just hit design and it turns this, AI crap sometimes into non-crap. Slide deck. Let's see what it came up with. I'm going to open this up and let's see. Can y'all see the PowerPoint, or do I need to share that? Can't see the PowerPoint. All right, let me stop share and then just share this screen. So it came up with a PowerPoint. So as I said, it's pretty bland and boring, but what I would do is I would just go up here to, well, y'all are kind of in the way, designer, and allow it to brighten it up a bit. And all of a sudden this bland, text screen turns into something a little bit nicer. And I may change it a bit or two as well. So let me go ahead and hit stop share again. So I'm going to say that I'm satisfied with showing y'all that. Before I move into something else, like I'm satisfied with the fact that we've gotten a module done. I talked through all of this. Do y'all have any questions before I move on to one more thing?
So I've got a question. Have you ever tried moving that information over to Gamma to make a PowerPoint?
I don't know what gamma is, so the answer is no.
Okay, perfect.
Maybe you can teach me that.
It seems like people in the chat are having great success with it. I tried it whenever it was first on the scene and I wasn't real thrilled with it, but it's because I'm a real control freak about what goes on my slides. So there may be that.
Okay, so going back to the story of how I designed that course in 60 hours, um, yeah, I had ChatGPT make the PowerPoints for me, and I actually have it made me a script for each PowerPoint. And so I don't make videos where I'm present. I always just record over the PowerPoint slide, and then I turn the whole thing into a MP4 and into a video, because it's a lot easier to fix. If you're like 8 minutes into a talk and you mess up, it's a lot easier to fix one slide talking over than all of 8 minutes. And so anyway, it did a really good job of creating slides. And then I would go in and I would tweak. I wouldn't say it that way, so let me say it this way, that sort of thing. All right, now part two of this. So that's part one, using this to design a course, redesign a course. Part two, and I want to think that thanks to COVID, I spent a lot of time teaching online in this format or asynchronously. And this is not who I am as a teacher. I'm a very, to put a word with a constructivist minded teacher. So I like the students, the burden of learning on them and not on me. I already know this stuff. And I also am a teacher educator. And so I want to model what I consider to be exceptional teaching practices. And so for me to stand up and lecture does not model good teaching practices to my future teachers. And so I recognize that everything I do in a classroom can be critiqued or viewed critically in a way that, okay, if it's okay for him to do this as a teacher, then I can do it as a teacher. And so I don't ever want to model practices that I don't think are best. Best for me, but I don't know if I believe in such thing as a best practice for teaching, but best for me. And so, but for 5 years, I really got out of who I was as a teacher because, I had to. COVID happened. I graduated from Wisconsin. I had a faculty job. I had a new faculty job, and like here. And so I've moved a couple times, and I was just sort of out of sorts. And so last year I made a point of saying, okay, I need to go back to who I am. Like I don't like the teacher I've been doing this as, and I want to get back to who I am. And I have an honest admission. I forgot how to do it. Like I forgot how to do collaborative learning in a way. Like my toolbox had like rusted, I would say. Like all my tools were rusty and I don't remember how to do it. And so what I ended up doing was jumping on here again, and this I use ChatGPT and Claude interchangeably with this, and I would begin to say, okay, I need to teach this class differently. So let me figure this out. So I have a prompt that I'm going to show you. Again, this goes back to clear versus unclear prompts. I'm teaching chapter 8. This is be for an undergrad reading assessment class, elementary ed. Here's the book that we use. Here's the chapter. I have a 75-minute class I'd like to design activities for. I want the students to learn without me. I want the activities to be engaging and collaborative. That will allow students to master the content of this chapter. I'd like to facilitate, not directly lecture or teach. So this is just a prompt. And I don't know, I actually haven't even tried this out at all. So I don't know what this is. I didn't look at this in Gemini. Sometimes it doesn't even know the right chapter of the book. Like sometimes they don't know the content, or if it's a newer version. So this is the 6th edition. Maybe it doesn't have the 6th edition in its memory of some kind. Maybe it's the 5th edition. And so you also need to make sure that they know the book that you're working with, because sometimes, they're always wanting more money. So they always update the book every couple of years. So you have to buy a new one. So learning goals. So it's coming up with its own learning goals for the chapter. A quick hook, word detective warm up, display 3 unfamiliar words, ask, how do you teach a 2nd grader to read each one? And then you jot ideas down. Okay, so it's like hey, let's warm up. Then we do a jigsaw. ChatGPT loves jigsaws, by the way. I don't know if you ever knew this or not, but it's like I would say it's a really big jigsaw fan, because that's always the first thing it suggests. I don't know if like its mother, grandmother just sat at the table putting puzzles together um, growing up, but I'm telling you what, they love jigsaws. Everything is a jigsaw to them. But it's dividing into 3 groups. If you don't know what a jigsaw is, it's like let's chunk up content. Each group becomes an expert in that content, and then they merge into new groups. So there's a representative from every group, and they teach their content to everybody else. And so the idea would be that everybody becomes an expert in something, and then they all become experts in everything based on the teaching of it. It's really good for education majors because they're practicing learning and teaching, but it really gets old if it's every week they want to do. It suggests this. So hands-on strategy stations. So you have okay, they're practicing things, synthesis and application. So they're gonna do something here. They're gonna hang it on the wall, and then people are gonna walk around and look at it. And then there's a reflection. Note to self: I had a struggling reader tomorrow. One strategy from today I try is, and there you go. So this is again without a great prompt, but I think this is usable. This is very much usable information. But I'm going to give it a better prompt, and I'll walk through this prompt again because this one is super long again as well. I know this book because I've taught it for years. Let me get a new screen again. And in the book, they give you learning goals at the very beginning of the chapter. And so there are the learning goals for this book. It also, at the end of the chapter, gives you a summary. And so I copied the learning goals from the book. I copied the chapter summary. And they also have application activity suggestions too. And so instead of just telling it, this is what I'm working with and this is what I want to do, I gave it a lot of information. And this actually came out of frustration for me because sometimes they didn't know it didn't know this information because it's a bot. And so if I give it the information, it knows it, and that's how I view this again. And then at the end, I said I have a 75-minute class I like design activities for. I want the students to learn without me. This looks just like the other one. I want the activities to be engaging, collaborative. I like to facilitate. Please try to adapt some of the application activities to fit this lesson. So I'm not completely discounting the book. So, but the book application activities probably don't fit. So adapt some. That's the word right there. And let's see what it comes up with now. See, look, it keeps going with jigsaws. I actually thought jigsaws worked well when I did this last year, but I think I got tired of doing them, and that's maybe me. It's not a big difference in what they offer, but it is more detail. Like it provides more detail because it's aimed more accurately at what we're doing. So it didn't have jigsaws and these things. It talked about other things. Um, And here are application stations where this one, they're going to do this for 5 minutes. They'll do this one for 5 minutes. They'll do this. So they're rotating around the room, doing different things. By the way, every time I put 75 minutes into AI, it comes up with lessons that will take 2 hours. Um, and so I started midway through the semester changing it to 60 minutes. And I found that I could fit everything in 75 minutes, what it thinks I can fit in 60. It gives me a lot of good stuff to work with, but this is not where I usually stop because this is we're scholars, right? We want to triangulate data. So I'm going to go into Claude and hopefully it doesn't cut me off too soon. I haven't used it in 2 days, so it should be wanting, look, back at it, Tim. It wants me to work with it. I'm going to give that same prompt. I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to copy it back from over here. Let me give it the same prompt. Okay, it's going to bunch of text. Same prompt I did in ChatGPT, and let's see what Claude comes up with. Claude is like a more sophisticated like AI. It's actually coming up with a whole plan for me right here. It's giving me some great details. I would almost like Claude is like the Martha Stewart of AI. It's the one that like dresses everything up and makes it pretty. Um, That's what she would do with everything. I'm gonna go scroll up to the top while it's working and just start reading. Um, it's telling me what to do as facilitator. I mean, I love this. You need these. You need 4 stations. This is what you need for each station. This is really helpful if you're wanting to do so. Opening, learning objectives. This is our learning. We're going to post these up. We're going to be in stations. Okay, so 60 minutes of station. So there's no jigsaw in this one. And just off the top, I would probably choose this over the jigsaw because this seems more like I don't want to do 5 things in a class. I'd like to do like one big thing that's gonna be great. And so if they're gonna do 15 minutes at 4 stations, I like that idea a lot. And so I would probably, let's read, each group's gonna examine a set of materials explicit for implement. Okay, so they're doing things together as a group over the 15 minutes, chart paper, which approach aligns best. Okay. Reader observation. So okay. Like just judging from this would be a great idea. And especially if I had all the things readily available, like this is always Cindy Judd's in here, at least she was earlier. I would probably then just say, hey, because at my university, she's my librarian. I'm like, hey, Cindy, I need some help with this. And then she would be on it, um, which would be great. And if I don't have them like in mind what I would like to do. And then at the end, whole class synthesis. So then you're just going to talk about this. They're going to walk around and look at the different things that people came up with at the stations, create a discussion. Okay. During stations, it tells me about formative assessments. I'm like looking to make sure they understand all this stuff. Like this is really high. This is better than what I got from ChatGPT from a detail standpoint. Um, it's telling me I've never told it I wanted to facilitate and not teach. And so I'm kind of like, this is new to me to see like my role versus um, theirs or whatever. So this is new. Look, it connects to the learning goals, extension activities. This is great stuff. So I would probably, and you don't have to take this stuff verbatim. You can say, okay, I like this idea, and you like merge them together, which is why I'm using multiple AIs for this. And I'm going to stop sharing here, but and I'm going to wrap up. My class that I did this for, there were, I forgot to show y'all one thing. I'll show y'all in a second. Remind me to go back and show you models. I forgot to show models. Um, there are comments on my course evaluations from students that say he didn't teach us anything, but I learned a lot. And I take that as a win. I mean, reality is I wasn't telling them the information, they were learning. And it wasn't from me, it was from them. And I was like, okay, well, that's the win. If I saw that on my course evaluations, and I did, I'm like, this is like the greatest semester ever. That's like the greatest compliment I could have gotten on a course evaluation. Is like, he didn't teach me anything, but I learned a lot because that's how I set the course up. And so these are like tricks and tips. Let me go back and share my screen again. Just one more thing. Let me go back to ChatGPT. At the top here, this is what I mean by models. And so it's doing auto, so it's thinking between these two options. ChatGPT 5 is new. It's only been out for a couple weeks now, maybe a month. I can't remember. They have legacy models of 4.0, so you can, and it'll do that for you. It's a little bit different. Um, and so sometimes you get different answers based on the model. So I'm going to put 4 in. I'm going to copy this whole thing again. Hold on. Change back to 4 and see what it comes up with. Because it may be a little bit different. I bet you there's jigsaw still because it's ChatGPT. See, jigsaw. Again, it goes into stations, but it's really helpful. These are a little bit different than before because it's got like, or Gillingham, Fountain. Well, this would already be an issue because Fountain Spinell has been outdated and problematic. They're actually banned in Kentucky, so this would need some help. Okay. I did get different things out of this though. All right, stopping share. And so with that, I'm done talking with what I wanted to talk about. Comments, questions?
Well,
Um,
I'll point out we're having a great discussion in the chat about the privacy of what we're uploading to AIs.
yeah,
Mark makes the point that if you have a proprietary assignment or will be publishing, such as in a scholarship of teaching and learning project, you may not want to upload it. And there was a conversation about, are there settings you can use that would maybe prevent this from happening? But I cited 2 recent articles that the New York Times versus OpenAI has made it so that even our temporary chats that OpenAI promised not to retain are
right.
now being retained and may become public record or visible to whomever is petitioning this in the courts. So it's really important to think about what we're putting into these public AI tools.
Yeah. To add to that, um, like Gemini is one of we have a FERPA agreement with them. And so
Mhm.
anything as I'm logged into in my EKU account, I am safe. Like I've used chat, like that's part of the reason why I'm trying to start using the ones that are available to us, that I've been resistant to. So I can be more, I don't know, open about what I put in there and that sort of thing.
Yes, having a contract with an AI tool gives us additional data protections that we don't have with non-procured tools. Good
Yes.
point. All right, what other questions do people have? We've got about 6 minutes.
City Tran, what a good one. It doesn't, if we're using FERPA data in there. So I would not be uploading student work or things with FERPA data on it into ChatGPT or Claude because of those rules. But Gemini signed in your EKU account would be okay.
And I'll note that that policy is in flux at the moment. We do not have an official workplace AI use in the workplace policy yet.
I was told that it may be revised.
Correct. That's the goal.
Nice.
We had a question about, will links in the chat be provided? I've absolutely been collecting all the links and we'll send that out with a link to the recording in the next couple of days when we're done here.
Tim, I have a question. This is Cindy.
Hey, Cindy.
Um, do you disclose, now I know the course you're designing right now is not going live yet, but do you disclose to students, because you're working with pre-service teachers, do you disclose to them how you're using AI in your own planning as a teacher, to sort of model or, you know, sort of give them an idea of how they may themselves in the future benefit from using AI to design lessons.
Yes, I don't do it till the end of the semester though, because in particular, I teach a class that it's about lesson planning and they need to be able to demonstrate they can do it. But I also like my reasoning for showing them all of this and letting them think through this with me is that there are days that teachers just don't have it. They're showing up for work, but they just aren't there. And rather than putting a movie on or giving them some meaningless worksheet, they can spend 5 minutes on an AI and come up with a lesson plan that may allow them to actually do something productive on those days where they just don't feel like it. Which maybe every day, maybe every day. I don't know.
Kim had a question. She wanted to know, do they have the expertise to evaluate the output?
That's the problem. I'm actually testing AI right now, and I'm asking students to turn their work. They don't have to. I'm giving the option to take like I get some mentor work and descriptions and put it into AI with their work and have it like give it feedback, like I would give them feedback. And so I'm testing that right now to see if it improves the products that I end up getting on the other side. Not everyone is doing it, but a few of them have done it. The issue is if they so that's one thing I'm doing with it, but they don't also know if the feedback if it is the right kind of feedback, because I don't think they have the bandwidth yet, the knowledge yet to do all of the different, the history, the experience, all that stuff that they need to pull to be able to make sure something is legit. And so that's why I'm testing it. The other thing I would say is, like everything, it's got to be vetted. Like I'm a content expert in literacy and writing instruction, which is why when I got that course design, I really didn't want it I didn't want it to be generic. I wanted it to be like impactful, which is why I put the street, and the New London Group stuff in there because I recognize it. I don't expect students to know that though, because that's really that's a lot of, and so over time, I think they would be able to do that, but not like an undergrad student. I would not see that. I don't think.
Awesome. We've got 2 minutes. What other questions do you have?
Look at Scott Lusk. So by the way, Scott Lusk and I are working on a project called Wobble a Day. I'm going to put a pitch in there. Wobbleaday.com. And we developed an AI chatbot. It's like we're at like 15% of this developed for teachers to navigate difficulties. And so we have a scenario every day that they can chat with I created this chatbot. It's designed by my research. But Scott is a tech genius, and he works. I'm going to say this, Scott. If I can't, then we'll blank it out. But he works for Microsoft, and he's built the website, and he oversees the website. But wobbleaday.com, it's an AI-driven website for teachers. Sign up for an account, play with it. It's actually quite fun.
And I'll include that in our links.
Awesome.
And he says to scratch Tech Genius from the recording. Not
the Microsoft. Hey, let me in this chat, I'm going to leave my my email just in case. There's the email, wobbleaday.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. Lisa tagged me on there. I just don't know what my LinkedIn stuff is. And frankly, I only have like 15 connections because I don't really use it. I have used it a lot lately, but yeah, this was fun. I do
awesome.
y'all being here.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. We appreciate the time and attention you've put into developing this information to share with us today. So as I mentioned, I will grab this recording, pretty it up a little bit, scratch the Tech Genius there, and send out a list of all of these very valuable links that everybody shared with us. So thank you all for enriching this discussion. We appreciate your time today.
Yeah.